down, we might be able to do a live telescope view for you. Maybe kiss Orion goodbye. And I think you guys know what I mean when we talk about that with Orion. So let's turn to our guest speaker this evening. This is really exciting for me because in our audience, not only do we have Stephen, but I've invited two guest presenters that you're all familiar with. Lori Widener, who's presented this most recently with us at the Centennial School District, a sellout, and also, I hate to brag, and also Ed McCafferty will be tuning in, and you guys know him because he's presented the Gustav Holst presentation, where we take music and put it to science, and we've done that in the Fells Planetarium, and we've sold it out twice at the Hayden Planetarium up in New York. Who knows if we'll get to that point again, but it's interesting that we've been doing this for years. And it's been an acclaimed program because it really is one of the agendas of modern education today, is to show kids and students how everything interacts. The whole STEM initiative is really to, put a focus on how these sciences come together. And astronomy really is one of the causes that they come together for a greater understanding for. So it was so neat when I heard about Stephen, and he said that he made a new piece of music and that this suite was going to take us further than Gustav Holst. This was going to address some astronomical topics. And I know a couple of things about him from talking to him recently. You got to watch out where you go, especially as a child. He was in a planetarium when he was a child and was amazed by it. And he also went to Bowling Green University, which has, some of us know, the leading planetarium in the nation. And the reason I say that is because the director out there, an amazing gentleman, Dale Smith, he has been a real, let's just say, motivator in our field, the planetarium field, for years and years. So here's the product of that. A person goes through this, he goes through the planetariums, and Steve had said to me he was interested in either being a musician or maybe a scientist of some type, and it looks like musician won out, and this is putting together his love of science and music. So Lou, you don't have to use this, but I forgot to do this. I guess we could call this the official start, of the March event. And I'd like to turn it over to our guest presenter this month, who's going to do a musical presentation for us. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't have headphones on, now's a good time to do it. If you can plug your audio into a big stereo system, now might be the time also. Warm welcome to our guest presenter tonight, Stephen Grieco.
Thank you very much. Give me 1 minute to just set up the screen share. So again, welcome. And I do have to say thank you very, very much to Ted and his team and Rittenhouse Astronomical Society. I just feel that this is just a great opportunity, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone today about this piece. So as Ted was saying, Gustav Holst obviously has been around, has been displayed in music schools, in different formats for us to study, and was definitely inspirational to me. The first time I had heard that, I really wanted to learn much more about it. And again, as you're aware, it's an orchestral suite of 7 individual movements. And the main difference between that piece and what you're about to hear tonight is the fact that each of those was obviously focused on a planet and was mostly looking at the astrological character of it. When we're looking at this particular piece for Dark Adaptation, this actually combines multiple elements that are directly related to astronomy. So those things actually inspired the music. I purposefully worked with an astronomer on this project, again, to ensure its authenticity and to also find unique ways to actually tie the music directly to those inspirational elements of these different astronomical elements. This piece also doesn't focus specifically on planets, but it focuses on other elements, astronomical terms and phenomena as we'll get to throughout the evening. But it's one of the unique things about this piece. So I view it kind of as an extension to the Holst piece. And it's really my hope to continue this. Part of the reason for the project for me is as Ted said, you know, I've always had this love of music, astronomy, artwork. And I think, you know, as he said, be careful what you get exposed to as a child, because the reality is there's so many wonderful things that just pierce the imagination and really stay with you forever. So again, you know, the first time my father brought home, you know, again, the tiny little telescope that, you know, I used to call a pirate telescope, and you could see the moon really great, and that was inspiring. And being able to go to the planetariums and enjoy those shows, it really was capturing to me. And I wanted to find a way to create something new musically that would also allow people to be interested in both music, art, and science, and see the connections, because there are a lot of connections between these things. So that's one of the main reasons for this project. So I really wanted to reach out to as many people as possible on it. And again, I'm very grateful for the opportunity here to present today with Rittenhouse. So the project team, obviously I'm the composer on this team. We have Marie Grieco, who is an artist. She's been in the art world for over 40 years. And we'll hear a little about from her today. And also Dr. Richard Thompson, who has his PhD in astronomy and astrophysics. And he's the person that helped me out also with the astronomical elements in this project. So to get to know the team a little bit, we're going to hear a little bit first from the artist.
Well, the music was a good inspiration for me, because as I do a painting, I do research. So the music was my inspiration on how I would perform the act of painting, the expression, the feeling, the emotion, the definition of what I was listening to and therefore seeing through my art. The objects that were the subject matter all came together with the art and the music for me. I want to express myself through my painting, saying, here I am. We pass this world in a blink of an eye, and in that blink, I want to exist. And through my paintings, I express who I am, and maybe that's an example for people to know that if you stop, look, appreciate, ponder this world and the next, music and art are common language. It's the best way to do any form of communication. It really has been a journey as far as science, mystery, you know, it enables me to go where I can't go, space. And between the music drove me in such a way, because you truly expressed the subject matter. And I really love each piece differently. And it was an inspiration differently. I got so much out of it. I truly do want more.
So again, just a little bit from the artist and her perspective about her craft and her interaction with the piece. So what you'll hear once we break into the music section of this is you will see all of these individual movements. She has created an original piece of artwork for each one of those. And again, I'm very grateful for her participation in this process. So if we move ahead here, we'll learn a little bit from the astronomer.
Astronomy goes all the way back to my childhood. It was a childhood hobby, a childhood interest. I remember early years of high school, my grandmother bought me just sort of the standard department store telescope, and which I always have to assure my students that they work just fine, just to get into the field. You know, of course, you can spend as much money as you want and get as big of a telescope as you want, but just that entry level, Walmart kind of a telescope. But then I got out in the backyard and I just started to explore. And off to college, I'm a member of a very large group of people who initially thought they wanted to be engineers. And when I realized from my first year in engineering courses that that was not what I really wanted to do, I changed my major to astronomy. It's a very interesting group of objects that you've chosen to represent musically. A very wide range, but also for my own, personally, a lot of them have connections to what I've done either as a teacher or as a professional astronomer. For instance, one of the objects that you talk about is Centaurus A. So that's an active galaxy. It's not the pretty pinwheel galaxy that you see in a lot of pictures, but when you get right down to it and you start to see the amount of X-rays and radio radiation and the jets that are coming out of this object, and you dig into it, and astronomers have learned that there's this supermassive black hole in the center that's generating this power. That to me just makes it an even cooler kind of an object, and that's where most of my early research focused, was on active galaxies and trying to model the kind of emission that's coming from those black holes. But then at another end of the scale, you've got a movement about a planet that's orbiting a pulsar. So a pulsar is really a dead star, and this planet was discovered. It was actually one of the first extrasolar planets to be discovered. And my connection with that is that pulsars were actually the very first projects I worked on as a graduate student. Moved on to galaxies from there, but it was my first summer research project was on pulsars. And the other interesting thing is that the announcement of these planets that are orbiting this pulsar, the announcement was made during someone's interview talk at Penn State, and I was actually there in the room when they mentioned that. And we're like, just the idea that we finally crossed the threshold now of finding planets out there. There was just a little disappointment because we knew, because of the environment it's in, it couldn't be hosting life, but at least we had techniques now where we could find things of that size. Other objects that show up in your menagerie here: X-ray binaries, interacting X-ray binaries. So white dwarf stars at the end of their lifespan, stars that may have been similar to what our sun is like now, winding up in a very, very close binary system, actually exchanging material between each other. They're so close that gravitationally this material can be transferred, and that liberates huge amounts of energy that we see as X-ray, flickers of X-ray light. And the idea of a binary system of stars that orbiting each other, one passing in front of the other, that idea of an occultation, well, that's yet another one of the movements. Just the basic idea of one object passing in front of the other. But it's a very simple idea, but it's a very powerful tool for astronomers, is that what we can learn about one object or the other by watching what happens as one blocks the light from the other. And again, a personal connection is that after I started my teaching career at a small college in West Texas, McMurray University, a lot of the research projects I carried out with students were on variable stars. And some of these varied because of eclipses and some varied because of other reasons. But seeing all of the galaxies, the pulsar planets, the occulting, binary stars and so forth, it was just really neat for me, because it was like, if I had to pick a group of objects, I would have picked a lot of these types of things myself. And so I think it's a really good cross section of the kinds of things that are out there. Other types of stars, neutrinos, subatomic particles, but they're useful for learning about the interiors of stars. It's really quite the collection of topics that both the general public could be interested in reading about, learning about, and then astronomers are very active in studying these days.
So when we get to the music elements, this particular piece has 10 specific movements, technically 11 because I have a bonus track, which is part of the album, but I focus on, again, the first 10 movements that we have here, and you'll be listening to these this evening. And I wanted to talk a little bit about each one of these just to give a brief highlight. So one thing in particular is I'm going to talk a little bit about just the musical elements as to what's happening, what to listen for as you're going through these as well, to kind of gain a deeper understanding of it. So again, for Centaurus A, as we're looking at this, the low strings in this particular movement represents that black hole. And then we've got, you'll hear this contrasting area where we have high strings using the tremolo, which is when string players take the bow and they're playing quickly back and forth. It creates this kind of spinning type of structure with the galaxy. So again, what's the challenge of creating something musical that represents these in a musical way and also again ties into the astronomy elements was the challenge for this piece and for each specific movement. So as you're listening to this one, one of the questions to ask yourself is, at what point musically does Centaurus A collide with and essentially consume this nearby spiral galaxy? So one thing to consider as you're listening to this piece. With Sirius, this is a very different movement. So for this particular one, your tempo is largo, which is slow. It has these extremely extended chordal harmonies that you'll hear. The overall range for this piece is much higher as well. There's a lot of stepwise motion that's in here. It takes a lot of care. And part of this, again, based on the mythology of who Sirius was and how it relates to the planet itself, it's all about this growth. Again, the harvest, the motherly elements of this particular piece. So as you're listening to this, again, what gives this piece its emotion and warmth, and what musical elements, as you listen to us, might capture again that motherly love and just the whole persona of this goddess of Sirius. For Drugar, as we heard from our astronomer, this is essentially our first, exoplanet, but a dead planet. And I really wanted to try to capture this. So woven in this is actually a theme that's been around since many believe earlier than 600 AD, but it's the Dies Irae. And the sound of that specific theme sounds like this. And this theme has been used in so many movies, and I have a number of them listed there. It's been used and incorporated by other composers, Mozart, Berlioz, Verdi. And this theme comes across to represent against that darker side of this. In this particular piece, again, you'll hear this theme in the low strings, which sounds like this. And we have essentially this chase. So as we were told, again, you have this dead planet that is rotating to almost capture that pulsar. And I wanted to capture this in two different musical themes. One is, again, the Dies Irae theme, which we'll hear. And then there's also this contrasting, softer, more melodic melody that you're going to hear in this piece as well. For our next movement, Fomalhaut, this is a very highly expressive piece. The rhythms in this are more free, so it's not as rhythmically driving. And again, with this piece, as you're listening to it, this has been called many times as essentially the lonely star. And how do you capture that again musically? In this particular movement, we have a solo violin, which hopefully you'll hear will portray that solitude and loneliness, if you will. Again, the mode that we use in music, there's two different modes. One is major, one is minor. I often tell my students, again, as you're thinking about it, in Western music, many of us think as major mode being as a happy type of sound and minor mode being more of a sad type of sound to it. And this particular movement, again, to go with the thematic material of this particular star, is in a minor mode. For neutrinos, again, you're going to hear something very different. So obviously, with neutrinos being one of the absolute smallest particles here, I wanted to translate that musically. And to do that, one of the shortest ways to play something on the violin, since this is for string orchestra, is to actually put the bow down. So this movement does not use any bowing techniques. What it uses specifically a plucking technique known as a pizzicato, and that's what's used throughout this whole piece. It's highly accented, meaning you're not going to have a regular rhythm that's happening per se. There's a lot of syncopation in it. And again, that was to capture the randomness that these neutrinos come in to play. So there's a lot of these elements, again, that I'm trying to incorporate in musically with this. And hopefully you'll hear that with these specific pitches as you move along. Then we get to event horizon. Event horizon, again, with the subject matter, again, how do you capture that musically? So you're focusing in on a dynamic level. Again, musicians refer to this as forte, which in Italian means strong. And in this case is going to mean loud, right? This is one of our most aggressive movements that we have in this piece. Again, this is a minor mode to capture this darker texture. It is highly chromatic. And the form in this piece, because all of these pieces have a structure and form to it, I wanted to capture, again, this constant change, because that's what happens. We have this actual change in the piece. So as you're listening to this one, what musical gesture represents the spinning of the black hole? And what does the music, or when does the music actually indicate that you're descending into the black hole? So this is something that, again, as you're listening to this movement, kind of keep that in the back of your mind here. Occultation, as we're listening to this, again, how do you capture this astronomical element of these two objects passing? And what happens in that case? Again, anybody that's ever watched any kind of eclipse, it takes a while. And unfortunately, at just the moment that you want it to last, it moves and then it's gone. So what we want to be able to do is, in this particular piece, again, how do you capture that musically? And the way to do that for me was to use only two chords, one representing one planetary object and another chord representing another planetary object. So we start off with E major, and then we move to F sharp major. And when you put these two chords together, it creates what's called bitonality. So we have both of these that happen together. However, through the manipulation of dynamics, there's no meter to this, again, to capture that long amount of time for this occultation to happen. This particular movement, I have a very specific time. So I created this to be exactly 3 minutes long, again, to pay homage, if you will, to the fact that the last planetary occultation happened on January 3rd, 1818. So I used that and just the numerical elements of this to also capture some of this. The climax of this piece happens exactly at the golden ratio. which you'll hear a slight change then into a minor mode. And at that moment, again, is where this would be in full shadow. So listen for when does that occultation happen in the piece musically here. So for our next piece, with this specific element, we do have this close, it's one of the closest binary systems we have. And in order to capture that musically, I use the interval, and an interval in music is the distance between two notes. And this one of the smallest intervals that you can have in Western music between two different notes is a minor second. So the melody line that you'll hear to represent this, essentially these two binary objects, is this minor second that alternates back and forth. We also have in this particular object, astronomically, there are a number of periodic spikes that happen in the X-ray emissions. And again, to capture that musically, I'm creating some more syncopation that you'll hear in this middle section. And the last thing with this one is, again, since the orbital period is 5.4 minutes exactly, I felt that it was really important for me to make sure that this composition also exhibited that. So this piece is also exactly 5.4 minutes. And again, this is some of the things I was talking about as far as this album. It does directly relate the astronomical elements in directly with what you're going to hear here with the music. For Mystic Mountain, again, with this being this type of nebula, and you have all of these dust particles coming in from everywhere, you're going to actually hear some small snippets from the other movements actually in this particular piece, again, to try to capture those elements. And as you look at this, again, we have the potential for new stars to be formed in this area. So as you listen to this piece, you'll have to determine for yourself whether there is a new star formed and born in this movement, and if so, when does that happen? And our final piece is seeking. So for this one, again, we're always asking, questions, not only in science, but in every discipline. And I just put these questions out here for you to consider as you listen to this. So this is a longer of the movements. And again, what are you seeking in this? Does the music answer the question, are we alone in the universe? And you'll have to listen and see if that makes the determination. So, and the other thing to just put out there, again, in the educational portion of this is also just, as you're moving along your own journey, obviously for this group, I probably don't need to say this, but, take some time to enjoy the night sky, learn what you can about light pollution, and definitely, as I said earlier, I appreciate the opportunity for Rittenhouse to have this event, because it does support the fine and performing arts. So this is just a general overview. The album does come with a special edition booklet, which has more information, including information specifically about each astronomical element and the musical elements. And that, again, you can actually download on the website. So without any further ado, at this point, I will start the show. So this is where, in our new virtual concert mode that we have, this would be your time to shut off the cell phone, shut off the light, again, to begin your own dark adaptation of this and enjoy the show.
I have to remember to turn the mic on. Are you there, Steve? Can I hear you? Do you hear me?
I am. So I hope you enjoyed it. Again,
nice.
I really want to say again, thank you very much for your time. I know we're going to do Q&A in the breakouts here, but so the shameless plug is, again, if you enjoy this, you can purchase this online. It does again come with the additional track and the digital album. So again, thank you very much, everyone.
So Steve, can I give everyone a quick plug too about this? Hey guys, I don't know if you do this while you observe, but you know, at Rittenhouse, we always try to make a big thing and we're all coming together and we're all doing astronomy together. And in more reality, you spend more time by yourself. You go out with your telescope. It's a very solitary thing. And more recently, I've taken into putting headphones on and going outside and listening to music while I'm observing. And I'm always looking for different ambient pieces. This is not an ambient piece because it has definite melody all through them. But this is a great thing to listen to in headphones while you're out back in the yard or observing. It's a beautiful accompaniment. It's got some very dramatic parts to it. And I was thinking of a couple ways we might be able to help you out, Steve. One is we're going to be doing like private small gatherings at the observatory this summer. And I had said, I'd like to play music in the background when we do some of these. So rather than worry about copyright infringement or issues, would you let us use a piece or two at the observatory as long as we plug or promote you, you know, for the piece? Is that okay?
Absolutely. I would love that.
And I'll clear that with you. And here's another thing, and you can also talk to me private offline to it. Do you remember the review I wrote about the piece?
Yes.
When he first gave me the entire musical piece, I didn't get the booklet right away. I couldn't download it. So I listened to the whole thing just with the music, and then I listened to it with the science included. And I wrote up probably a review on about 9 of the pieces. So here's how we can probably help. When's the official release date of the piece?
So the official release is the 20th. That's when it goes on to, you know, Spotify and iTunes and all those different places.
So let's just not update our website for a bit and leave you hanging up there till the 20th. Let's leave you up top there so we can actually promote and plug that also. And how about that review I wrote up? If you're amenable to it, I can post that online and leave that there as the run up to the official release date on the 22nd. Okay.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. It'll be a lot of fun. I can imagine using this. Maybe Al Ryan's somewhere in the background here. He's our observatory director. I can imagine maybe using some of these pieces as a musical background for us, and we'll make sure we plug you also. Like Steve had said, we have a couple things, and you know, there's a debate about, do we run forever? Do we make sure our presentations are short? Well, tonight I just thought, oh, people will come and go as they want to. So we're going to do 2 more segments, and we're going to let it run on YouTube. But when people come back and visit this site afterward, we'll probably chop it right about here. So for the worldwide audience in the YouTube edit world, I'd like to thank you all for coming out to the Rittenhouse Astronomical Society. Members and everybody with me, don't run away yet. We're not done. But this will be like the demarcation mark of where the online stops. But